self-care is not selfish. It's actually the biggest part of showing love that you could offer to your family, your friends, and your community.
As women, we nurture and take care of the world. And so it's just so important to make your health, your self-care numero uno. So
get around people who are going where you want to go and who are where you want to be. And that's exactly what I did. I wanted to be in real estate, so I got around people who were doing things in real estate that I wanted to do.
So you might not be able to move things around or change what happened to you, but if you can change the way that you see it and how you're reacting to it, there's a way.
Just do what you have to do. There's no excuse. This morning, I knew that if I didn't get up at 4 a.m. and clear out my emails and do everything that I needed to do.
You don't want the government to dictate or a judge to dictate how your hard-earned sacrifice and wealth gets distributed to your family and your loved ones.
Our culture is embedded in American culture. There are people who come to America and engage in American culture, which is Black culture. So Juneteenth is really about Black culture, and it's about celebrating us, celebrating the different diasporas of Black people, even the dialects.
You would think this is our first time. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Athenia Rodney, CEO and founder of Juneteenth NYC, and we are super excited to have you with us here on today. This Thursday is always a fun Thursday in this world that we are living. We made it to December, y'all. This is the last month of the fourth quarter for all my business owners, and we are just celebrated Thanksgiving, and we are in a space of what are we thankful for. So if you are in the room, I would love for you to just put in the chat, what are you thankful for? And not something that you did, but what was done for you? Like what has life brought to your door that you have to be thankful for? For myself, I would say that I am thankful for not just life and breathing, but my talents and my abilities, because I am continuing to see that I have them, right? That no one else has the same abilities as myself, and that God preordained or gave me these talents to be able to walk in and to support and to love on others in the way that I do. Because no one else can love on others like I do. So I thank you all. I look forward to seeing your comments in the chat. And we're going to get started for today. Today we have a very amazing and audacious conversation. This one is rooted, like all others, in vision, legacy, and global responsibility. Now, this month we are going to be going global. We're going to be all up in Africa this month. So we're going to be meeting with a number of different individuals to learn a lot of different things from finance in Ghana to just your abilities and engagements from with Ghana. All of this is to prepare for our trip in December. So if you are interested and you have not already, please go to our website, juneteenthny.com, to learn a little bit more about our trip to Ghana for December, for the new year. So we'll be in Ghana for New Year's for next year. We are meeting with today, we're talking about connection, not just an idea, but as a calling, not just a buzzword that a lot of us may utilize, because we talk about, oh, I'm connected, or this way and that way. But it's really a commitment, right? Because when we choose to reconnect, we choose truth. We choose healing. We choose to stand in the fullness of who we are as global individuals. Guiding us through this transformative dialogue conversation is my friend that I have connected with, Miss Nanette Atahuhin. And I hope I pronounced that correctly. You'll come on and tell me if I did. And I'm sorry. She is a mindset and executive coach with over 25 years of experience guiding African diasporian professionals to a purpose beyond the paycheck. And that is so important right now, especially where a lot of people are thinking about leaving the United States or getting visas or dual citizenships in different places, right? So understanding what the cultures are in these different spaces are going to help us to choose where we want to go next, if that is something that we so desire. So beyond her coaching brilliance, Nanette is a vessel of insight, a global thinker, a mother, a traveler, and a builder of bridges between the continent and the diaspora. Her work spans Haiti, Rwanda, Ghana, and the US and beyond. So she is very much well-traveled. Through fierce questions and compassionate accountability, she helps people get unstuck, take action, and bring their visions to life. So let's welcome Miss Nanette to the stage.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, hello, my love. How are you doing? And welcome to our Juneteenth platform. We are really excited to have you. So to get us started, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you have been up to lately.
All right. So first of all, I am the daughter of Kopi Kwatene Tuahene, the daughter of Equia Efrie Achampong, and the granddaughter of Nana Yamansa, Nana SK Tuahene, Nana Kwame Achampong, and Nana Yechan Shamating. And I am Nana Etuahene, the product of all these amazing people. And so a little bit about me. I am the first one ever to be born and raised in the United States on both sides of my family. So my parents are from Ghana. And so I grew up during a time where DEI wasn't even a term, right? And so we were just aiming to survive, and they called it a melting pot back then, meaning you had to melt into somebody else's culture and leave yours behind. And so that's how I grew up. I grew up just trying to fit in, not really liking my African background and the fact that my parents were Ghanaian and the fact that my dad had a thick old accent, I just grew up in those times, where you were actually ashamed of your upbringing. And so for me, everything changed in my teens, because that was a time where hip hop was embracing Africa. We had X-Clan, we had Public Enemy, we had KRS-One, we had Queen Latifah, we had MC Lyte, spitting like wisdom, right? And so that's when things started to light up in me about my background, about who I am, about being proud, not trying to shy away from it. And then, unfortunately, a turn of events happened in our family's life. My mother passed away. And so even though she had never aimed to take us back to Ghana because she wanted us to grow up as American kids, her dying wish was to take her body back to Kumasi, Ghana. And so that was our first time going back. I was 19 years old, and I not only went for her, spirit and her tomb being there, but also as an exchange student at the University of Ghana. And that really opened my eyes to the rest of the world, because what I found out was in America, and I'm seeing it more because I've been speaking at with different organizations around the States. And what I saw as a 19-year-old when I started traveling, because from that point on I started traveling, I realized that even though we feel like we're in the richest nation in the world, we are really we have a narrow experience. Until you start moving outside of the US, your experience is really narrow. And I found out a lot of people were feeling, because of branding, you know, Hollywood, America's great, right? Feeling like they didn't need to go anywhere else. Like, this is it, right? And so when I was like that too, until I took that trip to Ghana. And when I took that trip to Ghana, it really opened my eyes to the fact that there's so much more to life. And that's where I've been, that's like my base, that's my foundation, and that's where I've been springing from. That's like my springboard, is the fact that there's so much more to life. And so, you know, one of the things, my background is real estate investing. I've done fix and flips. I've been a landlord, a real estate broker. And one of the things you learn about real estate is the higher you want to erect your building, the higher you want to erect your building, the deeper the foundation has to go, the more reinforced the foundation has to be. And so in that, I learned as a coach is that my job is to dig deep in that foundation so that you can rise as high as you want. Because until you dig that down, that foundation, everything's going to be shallow. You can't build high. And it's going to be built on sand, basically, right? And so that's the work I do as a mindset coach, as an executive coach, because no matter what business we're in, we don't realize how our life experiences. And one of the exercises I do is I have you reflect on decades in your life, 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, depending on how old you are. And I ask you to highlight some of the high points and the low points. And what I get from that is so many people saying, wow, I never knew that one thing is the reason why I act the way I do today. That one thing is the reason why I may be insecure and think that everything I do is wrong, right? That one word that my mom or my dad or my uncle or my auntie or my teacher said is why I move the way I do today. So those are some of the things that we work with when I'm working with clients, is looking at your past to bring you to the present so you can reconnect to your vision. And so earlier I spoke about.
I just wanted to jump in because what you shared is it's so powerful, and I have done that process as well. And it was definitely a mind shift for me. I writing out all of the different things. I had a thought about my mother that she didn't care. And when I did we call it our life story, anagram, and wrote it out, I saw that when I was going through my toughest time was also when my mother was going through her toughest time. It was a time when she found out that she was not just a only daughter, but she found out, imagine at the age of 36, finding out that you are not just one child, that you are one of 9, and that the person who raised you your entire life is not your mom, but your grand aunt, and that you have a whole mother and father in Trinidad, and like her whole trajectory was turned upside down. And so she was really trying to understand herself during that time, and she wasn't able to connect with me. And so the things that I needed her to be present for. But it's like, that's why I'm so involved right now. You know, I'm in my kids' school. I'm very involved in the PTA because I'm like, for people who are like my mom, who just are in a space of their life where they just had to disconnect for whatever reason or whatever might be going on for them, that I'm there to step in the gap, that I'm there to help their child to be an advocate for them, because I didn't have that. And so I love that you shared that you know, that's something that you utilize when you're coaching, because it is so powerful. It really is. So thank you for sharing that.
And one thing you said that stuck out to me, I was the experiment, because remember, I was the first one ever born in the United States. And so I experienced the same thing where my parents were just trying to survive. And so they worked a lot. We were latchkey kids when latchkey kids first came out, right? Going home by ourselves to our house with nobody there at the age of 12, right? And so I experienced the same thing. And it's funny that you said that, because we're always looking to do better than the last generation. So I was very involved with my children's schooling. I was part of the school site councils. Those are what we had, school site councils in California. So I was very active in those. Matter of fact, the admin used to use me as the voice because I would speak the truth, right? And so I totally get that because I wanted to do differently. But I also appreciate that you looked to understand your mother's position, because a lot of people don't. And so they hold these things against their mothers, especially because they never take time to say, what was she going through? It's all about me, right? So when it's all about me, who cares what she's going through? She's a mother. She's supposed to,
she's supposed to have it all together, right? And now that I'm a mother, I'm like, yeah, I need y'all to give me grace. So I understand. And a lot of times I feel like we don't give our parents grace until we are in that space ourselves, because now we're in a space of understanding. But I completely agree. And I don't know how to get people past that mindset of and without having a child. Like, how do I get people to be present to, let's take yourself out of the situation and let's think of it from their point of view, or what they might be going through and how they might feeling. Because I've always been a person like a forgiver, like I forgive easy, and it to my detriment a lot of times, right? And so this has been that space, and this is also, as you were talking about, like that going deeper, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so valid right now, because that's the part of the reason why we want to go to Ghana, right? That part of for us of like how we go deeper, how do we understand more about our culture. I shared this to the community before, but I don't know if I think I shared it with you, that the reason why I'm even doing this is when I went to Puerto Rico a couple of years ago, that there were, we went on this trip and they were sharing all of this information, or should I say, they were leaving out information about who tilled the land, who managed the land back in the days. Because that was my question. Like, you have a beautiful land. It's a lot of lands and it's near the water. Like, how did y'all manage this? And it was like, oh, well, we had help. I'm like, well, what kind of help? Did y'all have slaves here? And it was like, well, something like that. And she had to take me to the side and basically answer my question, because she couldn't publicly announce that they were getting illegal endangered slaves from Ghana nonetheless. And so that was like, I was like, so how many people, this land is huge. It was maybe 25 acres of land. Like, they had every kind of excursion that you can think of was on this property. And so imagine all of the tilling of land and managing of the land that had to go into that, and how many people. So I was like, well, do y'all have records of the people who came into this space? And then like, well, we're not at liberty to say, and people who have gone searching for it have gone missing. And I was just like, wow. So to know that is happening in this country, in Puerto Rico, I was like, how many other spaces are there stories similar to this, where our ancestors were taken and their names are not able to be mentioned? And I thank you for starting off this conversation by naming all of your ancestors and bringing them into the space and bringing them into the conversation, because that is something that we forget. Like, we tend to not to touch on and to bring them, because we embody them. Like, everything about us and how we show up is because of them. So thank you for sharing that and bringing that into the space.
And I want to point out that I have a very good relationship with my ancestors. Matter of fact, I travel the world a lot of times by myself, and I think in my head, my ancestors are like, okay, she's going again. Who got her this time?
And I love that. And I love that. It's like, oh, we gonna direct her in this way and that way. So you talked about a lot, right? I would love to jump into like understanding a little bit more about. We've talked about the colonization of Ghana versus the United States. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like and why that is so important for us to understand?
So I quickly want to tell you the story of watching the movie Hidden Figures. A lot of people watch the movie Hidden Figures about the brilliant sisters, mathematicians who helped NASA with their first space flight, right? And I walked out of that theater with a whole different experience. I walked out pissed off. I walked out enraged, outraged, upset, because what hit me was that these women were this brilliant, And first of all, it was called Hidden Figures because they hid them, right? And then second, it hit me, wow, usually when we're smart, we say it's because of our mom, our grandmom, our dad, our granddad. And in that moment, it hit me that with their brilliance that came from their mother, their grandmother, their father, their grandfather, they were enslaved. And so what hit me was, wow, we were that brilliant and our brilliance was enslaved. So then I started asking questions. What did they do with that brilliance? Then I remember people talking about stolen inventions, and now I understood it because I didn't understand it back then. I just thought it was some radicals saying some stuff, right? But now I understood it because I understood we were never slaves. We were never slaves. So what happened was now I start running through my head, oh my God, that's why my mentor, Babatunde, never used to use the word slave. He always used the word enslaved African, because we were always brilliant, but there was a system that made us think we were less than brilliant, that made us think we were slaves. But we were never slaves. And they had to put a system in place because we were naturally brilliant. They couldn't just let us be, right? Because we would never be slaves. So you couldn't read without risking your life. You couldn't own land without risking your life. Even going to church, your minister couldn't say what he needed to say, because he could get in trouble, right? So all these things started hitting me. If you looked a white person in the eye, you could get lynched. So I was like, wow. So there was actually a system of terrorism because we were naturally brilliant, and they had to put that system in place if they wanted to keep us slaves. So then I'm like, wow. First, it hit me. We've always been brilliant. There was no such thing as a slave in our DNA. Second thing that hit me was, okay, let me go from the US, the Caribbean, and the Americas over to Africa and ask that same question. What did they have in place that made us think we were less than brilliant? And it was colonialism. And so a lot of people don't understand colonialism. Even youth today in Ghana do not understand colonialism because it's getting wiped out of their books. And so I had to look at the root word of colonialism, which is colony. And I like to simplify things. So immediately what came to my head was insects, because when I was in school and we spoke about colony, we spoke about insects. That's what I identified colony with. So I thought of bees. And then I asked myself the question, what's the purpose of a worker bee? To serve who? And then it hit me. To serve the queen, not to serve the bees. And so in Ghana, I realized our whole system was built to serve the queen, Queen Elizabeth at that time. Our educational system was set up to serve the queen, not the Ghanaian. Our resources were set up to serve the queen. So we didn't add value. All we did was export. So the queen could do what her people needed to do and then send it back to us. So we had to pay all kinds of money for it. And then third, judicial system. In Ghana, our judges wear these ugly ass white wigs. Even our judicial system was set up to serve the queen. So all of this came to me and I was like, okay, why do I need to know all this? Because it was like a big old download, right? And then finally, the message came. When you know who you are, when you know you're amazing beyond measure, when you know you were born with brilliance, all those systems fall apart. Racism, sexism, all the isms, they fall apart because their whole purpose is to make us think we're less than brilliant. And my whole life trajectory changed from that one movie, because now I know I'm brilliant no matter what. Now, even when I fall, I know I'm brilliant. Billionaire or broke, I know I'm brilliant. Up or down, I know I'm brilliant. Peak or valley, I know I'm brilliant. Success or failure, I know I'm brilliant. So when I fall, I don't dramatize. I don't say, oh, everybody's watching me, I'm gonna die. I don't do that. I just get back up. I don't dramatize it anymore. So now I'm able to do so much more in my life and make so much more impact just because of that one movie. And so this is what I ask people to do. You have to know who you are. And I was in a session yesterday where I was presenting, and one of the elders in the group was like, well, we don't really need to dwell on the past. And I was like, listen, your grandmother and your great grandmother are in you. So yes, we do need to dwell on the past, but only for the purpose of empowerment. We need to know there were some lies told to us so we can tell the truth. If you don't know a lie was told to you, you think it's the truth. So we need to know it was a lie so that we can tell the truth about who we are, about what we come from, about our natural brilliance, about the fact that all these systems that were put in place were trying to dumb down our brilliance. And so when we know that, now when I walk in a space and people are trying to dumb it down, I'm like, I already know. I know who I am. You can try. Good try.
So, Nana, what are you doing to, I guess, work to help uncover, I guess, colonization? And you talked about, I guess, colonization in both spaces, right? Because colonization in America was about serving the Caucasian people, right? That was the at that time, and it still kind of is, and especially in this administration right now, it's kind of like it's a want to return back to that level of colonization where we are serving them and not serving community. Which is what, what was, it's funny. I was talking to somebody yesterday and we were like, oh, what's the biggest thing as an entrepreneur that, you find the hardest to figure out? And we were like, someone was like, how much money things cost. And I was like, no, it's the name of your business is the one hardest thing for any organizer to come up with. And when I came up with my name for my business, my first business, which is Umoja Events, everybody was like, oh my gosh, nobody knows what that's going to mean. And I was like, I wanted to find a way to say that I was a Black business without saying I was a Black business. And it's funny because I had people who would call me and they would be like, are you, I don't know how to ask this question, but are you a African-American business? And I love it. Unapologetically say, absolutely, we're a Black business. But I was so glad that was what came across. So what the intention about it is what came across. And so the intentionality of what colonization has done both in Ghana, where they are now, I guess you talked about before, I would like to hear now what colonization looks like in Ghana, because I know it is transformed itself here in the United States, and then it also is continuing to change.
Yes. So in Ghana, not too much has changed. The only thing that has changed is that youth are getting exposed to social media. So they're exposed to more ideas. And so they're not as conditioned as the generations before. Like my parents' generation, they were very conditioned. I remember, during that time where I talked about KRS-One and all that, I used to have debates with my father. My father was a lawyer, so he liked debates, or else I would have been in trouble. But we used to always debate. And I used to tell him all the time, you have a colonized mind. And until the point where he realized, wow, I do. He said one day he realized his grandmother had told him fables about why the white man's ruling the world. And he wasn't even aware of this until I started challenging him. He said his grandmother said, God was in the heavens and said, whoever can make it to the heavens first will rule the world. And he said the Black man started to climb on each other's shoulders, but they would pull each other down. Meanwhile, the white man was climbing on each other's shoulders and they kept going until they got to the heavens. That's a story my father was told by his grandmother that he wasn't even aware of until I started challenging him. And so in Ghana right now, like I said, we still have the systems in place. Most people are still conditioned because the educational system does not build creators, inventors, producers, innovators, and owners. It produces order takers. So we have this thing called chew and pour that they talk about in education in Ghana all the time. Chew and pour means you better chew the information your professor gives you exactly how it was given and pour it back exactly how it was given, meaning there's no critical thinking involved, right? And so we still have that issue, and they still talk about chew and pour today. And so what I do in Ghana, and when I'm working with the youth, I always talk about this. There's a musician called Kwame Eugene, and his tagline is, "We didn't come here to play." So when I'm with the youth, I say, I didn't come here to play, right? And so I tell them, I said, listen, your education is not made for you to be a producer, an owner, an innovator, an inventor, a creator. So you have to educate yourself outside of this school system. And you have the world's mind at your fingertips with these things we call phones. How are you using them? So this is the message I have for youth and even adults in Ghana today, is that we know we have to educate ourselves outside of the school system. But even in the States, I have a girlfriend, her grandfather, when she was 7 years old, told her, don't let school get in the way of your education. He had a 3rd grade education and he was the richest one in her family. He said, don't let school get in the way of your education. And so these are the things that we're sharing with youth out here and adults, saying, listen, you have to know the history to know how you're being conditioned. If you don't know the history, you think everything's fine.
I want to go back to so you said, don't let school get in the way of your education. So is that, what I'm taking away from that is that education is not just something that is schooling or formal traditional schooling, but it is about the experiences that you live outside of the 4 walls of the building. And I think that's where so much of especially African Americans are in the space of doing homeschooling and taking their kids to experience life, because in 4 walls everything is just in textbooks and not true. Like it's not the full story. It's only the story they want us to hear. So am I hearing you correctly in stating that that's what he was getting at?
Yeah, and beyond that, because we know when people graduate from school, on average, they read 1 book a year, right? Because they think education was just in school. It's not only in school, right? You can have people who share their experiences in life. They've gotten to where you want to go, mentors, right? They share their experience. That's school. And you know what? I'm so glad we're talking about this, because in Ghana, they have this habit of calling people who have not been formally educated. They have this habit of calling them uneducated. And that like gets under my skin, because I share with all these, you know, because it's a system that's looking to divide those who are formally educated from those who are informally educated. So I call it informally educated, because we're all educated. We are all educated. So there's no such word as uneducated.
Absolutely. We bring something to the table. And it's funny that you say that, because I've grappled with myself with that here. And I've gotten to the point where I've taken a stance and I'm like, no, I am, if not more educated and more experienced in things than someone with a doctorate degree. And I've had conversations with professors at colleges about the history of Juneteenth. And I know more information with my research and my focus and experience than they do. And I'm baffled. Like every year around June, I get called to speak at colleges, and I have professors and I have top deans of the school system. And I mean, hundreds of people are sitting in the room and they are standing up with applause like, oh my gosh, you just taught me something that I never knew. And I'm sitting there like, thank you, God, because it didn't come from me.
And I want to interrupt real quick, because those deans and those educated people let school get in the way of their education.
Yeah.
Because the information is there, isn't it? Right?
Yes.
It's there. You just took the time to educate yourself. You weren't waiting for a school to tell you what you needed to know. And these days, it's so important that we educate ourselves, because we have been bombarded with sound bites. Like when we talk about Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., all we base it on is a sound bite. We don't read a book about him and his experience. You know, we don't go to Auburn Avenue and listen to his speeches in the churches, right? So what you're doing is what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. No, I definitely, I'm like, this is so divine. Like this conversation, every time I think I've spoken to you, I feel like I've come up higher, or should I say, I've gone deeper into the ground so that I could come up higher. So I'm definitely going to start using that more and more, because I'm like, yeah, my father was in construction, and yes, as they continue to talk about this going up higher building, they would say, oh, we have to go 20 more feet deeper if we want to build X amount of, X higher. And my husband and I, we talk a lot about this going higher as well. And it's like from the first floor, it's easy for me to just jump out the window, right? It's easy for me to
Yes.
fall. Like if there is
Yeah.
something that doesn't go right, or it's like I don't have much to lose. But when I'm on the 10th and the 15th floor and I look out the window, I'm less likely to jump from a 10 or 15 story than from the first floor. So like I have a lot more to lose. I have a lot more skin in the game. I have more grit. And for us, I feel like we don't invest in, like you're saying, in that part of us, understanding more about our culture. And I'm one of those people, right? I was there. It wasn't until I went to a predominantly white school growing up, and I'm just gonna mute. I'm getting feedback. Uh-oh. I went to a predominantly white school growing up. Can you hear me? I lost all the screens. Okay. And I had to do a domestic exchange program at Spelman College because I wanted to learn about my culture. And it wasn't until I did that I walked away. But I was challenged in every space, right? As soon as I got there, they were like, "Oh, you're trying to be white." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" They say your hair is permed and you're doing all of this stuff trying to be them. And I'm like, "No, I'm trying to assimilate. Like this is what I need to do in order for them to see me." And it was like, "No, we gotta bring our own seat to the table." And they were just so rebel rousing. And I was just like, we
Wow.
can't be like that if we want them to even sit and have a conversation with us, because they're gonna feel like like they say we're angry and all of these things. I was like, we have to allow them to see why we're angry or why the things are the way they are from our side, so that they can be an advocate too. So it was a lot of conversation back and forth, but I hope they took away some information from me as I took away information from them, and being more grounded and like you said, going deeper and understanding more about my history, because that's what forced me to learn and to start doing more research in that space.
Yes, because I grew up in a PWI as well. And I did an exchange program like you, but I went to Southern University in Baton Rouge, and I had such an amazing time because that's the first time I saw a school acting like a family. That's the first time where I felt like I was just embraced, right? That's the first, my daughter graduated from Spelman, and I remember during all we call it Wahala, the first time Donald Trump came to power, she was like, I was insulated. I didn't have to deal with none of that at Spelman, right? And so just having that experience, I think, is so, so important. But I do like the fact that you brought a different perspective to the table, because I feel like, too, I'm very different in any circle. So I'm not the kind that just because we're in the conscious crowd, I'm going to agree with everybody in the conscious crowd, right? I'm not that person. So I appreciate that you were able to bring your perspective to the table. I don't have to agree with it. I just have to listen to other people's points of views. And thank God you were rooted enough to say, this is my opinion. I don't need you to agree with it, but listen to it and, take what you can.
And not for nothing, I feel like that is nothing but my ancestors, because I and God, I'm like, I don't know where this comes from. I don't know where this comes from, because I'll say, and I am very conscious about not being wrong and strong, but being strong and understanding, because we don't do enough of the understanding. And I guess and this was before I even came to the whole context of understanding the why between my mom and I and what had transpired there. So I guess this was part of my story, right? To be able to understand people from their perspectives, and to help others to do the same, because that's like I said, Umoja Unity has been the staple of my organization. And everything that I do with Juneteenth is about bringing people together. I find
and
that.
Let me tell you one thing from there, because it's so important.
Sure.
I listen to a lot of the motivational speakers, and I remember Tony Robbins said this, and this has changed my life too. He said, the reason we have issues in society is because we love to demonize people. So especially in today, where over the past few years, you could get canceled and all that stuff.
Yep, that cancel culture.
Demonizing people.
Yeah.
That's demonizing people. right? And so when you demonize people, you disconnect from people. And so what I learned in life is that I stopped demonizing people. There was one movie I watched, and it always seems to come through movies, and that's an extension of my mom. She was a movie lover. It's so funny. I just felt that right now. There's a movie called 50, a Nigerian movie. And this movie like transformed everything I do in my life because it had 4 successful Nigerian women in the movie. One was like an Oprah Winfrey, one was a medical doctor, one was an attorney, and one was like an elite wife. And so the Oprah character was mean as hell. She was so mean that even when you knew the movie was fake, you hated her. You like, she was just that mean. Like, why she gotta be like that, right? And so at the end of the movie, she was only nice to one person, and that was her little brother. Anytime she would act out, he would come to the scene to like save the whole situation, and then she would calm down. At the end of the movie, you find out her mother and her father, her mother and her start arguing. And then all of a sudden it comes out. My dad raped me, and you covered it up. And her little brother was her son. That movie changed my whole life because what it made me realize when I see people acting a certain way, I don't know what's behind that story. And so I stopped, and I'm the opposite of you. You said you forgive a lot. I was not forgiving. I was like the exact opposite of forgiving. I was a grudge holder like a mug. Like I could hold a grudge. I remember one time my sister disrespected me, and that's where I'm really African about, respecting the people who are older than you, taking care of you, watching out for you, whatever. And my sister disrespected me so bad one time, I disowned her for a whole month. Anytime people would ask me if she was my sister, I'd say, no, she's just an associate. To the point where she had to run to my mother and beg her and plead her to get me straight. And so I was a grudge holder. Like I was an Olympic grudge holder. And then when I watched that movie, and I was the kind of person, if somebody was on drugs, I'd be like, just get off of it. You ain't got no excuses. You just need to get off them drugs. When I watched that movie, I had a whole different view in my life. Now, when I see someone on drugs, I know there's a story behind it. I know there's some trauma they're dealing with. Anytime anybody acts out, I'm not demonizing them anymore because I understand there's some trauma they're dealing with that I don't know about. And most of the times I'll go straight to them now and ask the question, tell me about your trauma because you acting up. And I know it's not you naturally. What's your trauma? And mostly girls, boys, whatever, it'll be rape when they were younger.
That uncovering, that non-protection, that courage. Yeah. Wow.
So it just goes back to, the way we demonize people. Like, once we get over demonization, we can grow so much and we can build so much unity because even within our community, we demonize people, right? So when we're demonizing folks, we disconnect. Like we totally disconnect. We don't even have an opportunity to unite because when you demonize somebody, it's like, that's that enemy over there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have nothing to do with
their
them.
problem. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. And we have a couple of more minutes. Because this is something that we talked about in our conversation in this whole demonization thing, right? The demonization of African Americans versus Ghanaian, right? Or Africans, period. The fact that we're like, oh, we don't trust each other. Oh, they are, they're lazy. Or like just all of the thoughts that come to mind. Actually, I think I want to do a workshop before this year ends and just have us write all of the things that we've heard about ourselves in different spaces. And I would love to be able to have some Ghanaians be in that space as well and hear their story. Like, what are some of the things that they've heard about themselves? And then what are some of the things that you've heard about each other's culture? Because that is something that we, in planning this trip to go to Ghana, what kept coming out was, oh, I got to make sure that they're not going to steal our money and that we're going to go over there and they're not going to, they're going to be a fictitious organization. And I'm like, we don't do that when we are going to Australia, we take people at face value, and we assume that the same way that we found them online and that they are going to be true to whatever they say that they're going to do. We don't have in our minds like, oh, they're going to take our money and run. But for us in this space, that kept coming up like in so many different spaces amongst so many people. And I don't know if you can talk a little bit about where that might come from, or just your thoughts about it.
You know, I just had this experience recently. Because when I speak to people about Ghana, I wrote a book called Ghana, the Great, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, my journey of truth and repatriation. And what I realized, and this was just Sunday, I realized that because I'm looking to protect people, it's like I'm very negative, right? And so even I was talking that way, like you got to guard yourself, and they look nice, but they ain't nice, right? And I was doing all that myself. And my co-collaborator was like, Nanette, I don't think you need to go that deep. Because next thing you know, somebody that's doing business with me in Ghana was like, oh, I don't trust this, I don't trust that. And he was like, it's because of what you were saying earlier, right? And so I had to even tone it down, because not everybody's like that. On the same note, what I learned in Ghana, because this was a big, big lesson for me, because I was wondering, why do people, do this in some cases, right? And what I learned was, number one, trauma. I feel like Ghana is like the US back in the 60s and 70s. We didn't address trauma. We were just like, you just need to suck it up and keep moving. And we still do that in the US, but we just have more mental health tools, etc. In Ghana, we're still saying, oh, you think your situation is bad? I know so-and-so, and we totally sweep everything under the rug, right? So that's one. Number two, my friend Kwame, who's from Oakland, we're a whole bunch of people from the Bay are out here, and I lived in the Bay for several years, so I know a whole bunch of them. He shared something with me that was so powerful. He said, Nanette, poverty erodes integrity. This is anywhere in the world. Poverty erodes integrity. When he told me that, then I was able to deal with situations in a whole different way. So even though everybody's not out to get you like they make it, you still have to use your common sense, right? And so even me, I had to correct myself and not overdo it when I'm sharing with people what to watch out for, etc. And so it is a part of conditioning. I have so many funny stories. We'll talk about those later. My sister visited, and we had an incident that let us know that we were super paranoid, right? And we looked really foolish at the end. So there's a lot of conditioning around making people fearful about coming back home. And this isn't just back home, because I travel the world, and every time I travel, there's some kind of alert when you go on the US page, right? When I went to Cuba, it was, there was an attempted bomb threat at the US embassy in Cuba, right? When I went to Brazil, it was the Zika virus, right? Anytime I traveled somewhere, there was some kind of warning, some kind of alert. And what I found out is that we are needed in the US to work their system. So because we're needed in the US to work that system, you have to plant fear in people to keep them from wanting to leave.
So you said so much, and we don't even have time to go into it, but I do want to, I know you have events that you do in Ghana every year, and I would like for you to be able to share a little bit about that. I know this is December 18th. So it's of this year, and we're looking at partnering for next year for our trip. But can you just talk a little bit about what you do around this time so people know what to expect?
All right. So first of all, I have my company On Our Watch Global. So we help diaspora professionals, as you said, to get unstuck so that they could live the life of their vision, right? The life they envision, and not the life that's been prescribed for them by society. So that's number one. So there are three portions of On Our Watch Global, and I named it intentionally. What's happening on our watch? Are we being careful about what's happening on our watch? So that's why it's called On Our Watch Global. So number one is mindset, making sure our conditioning is empowering us and not inhibiting us. Number two is skill set. How do we build those skills, those leadership skills? How do we build those skills for the things that we say we want to do? And then number 3 is relationships. Mindset, skill set, relationships. So relationships is where we call it Deti December. They don't like that. You know, the older folks are like, call it December in Ghana. You know, but Deti December sounds more sexy. So in Deti December, we have a relationship event where everyone in the room, it's called Connect the Dots Networking Extravaganza. And I started this in 2022 because when I was coming, what I didn't share was before, when I had the eye-opening experience, knowing that I needed to come back to Ghana, I came back 3 months out of the year, every year from 2018 to 2022 when I moved to Ghana. And I noticed at the events, people would stay in their cliques. Even though it was supposed to be a networking event, people would stay in their church group or their senior high school, because senior high schools out here are almost like fraternities. And people weren't really networking. So my solution to that was Connect the Dots Networking Extravaganza. First half, everybody in the room stands up, says who they are, what they do, what they have to offer, and any need they have in the way of resources or connections. And then the second half, we always have a panel talk about their experience in Ghana or wherever we are, because I've done it in South Africa, I've done it in Rwanda. I even just did a tour in the United States, Connect the Dots Networking Extravaganza. We did California, DC, Atlanta, Philly, New York, and we did the same thing. And so it's all about relationships. So that's what we do for Deti December. We also have sessions that we do. So we offer a free 30-minute discovery call. And I'm just going to put it in the chat for you all to use during the session. We have a discovery call we offer for free, 30 minutes. And so what we do is we look at what you're looking to accomplish in your life, where you are now, where you want to go. And then we look at what's going to bridge that gap. And we see if any of our programs can support you. So we have Diaspora Business Launchpad programs. We have a coaching program. We also have programs around consultation for people who want to move. I wrote a book, I told you, The Great, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And so those are things that we have to offer. Also, because I founded an organization called Converge for Africa, this is an organization that educates, equips, and empowers African youth to become economically self-sufficient. And we do this through workforce development and business capacity building. We just finished our second annual conference in Ghana. We went to the breadbasket of Ghana because we focus on agriculture and agribusiness and all the opportunities beyond farming. So our first day was in the breadbasket of Ghana, the Bono region. And our second day was at UCC, University of Cape Coast. And then our third day was virtual. And so we had people from all over the diaspora, St. Lucia, Somaliland, Rwanda, Namibia, the UK, the US, speak about opportunities in agriculture and agribusiness. So this is some of the work that we do here. And it's been such a blessing. One thing people don't understand is in the States, you barely have time to think. So here in Ghana, because of the pace, because of me not having to have my head on swivel all the time, I'm able to think. So I've been able to create and create and create. And these are some of the things that have been created to really leave an impression on the youth and on Africans all over the diaspora.
Well, I am just floored by all of the things that you're doing. And there's just even in our story, as we've continued to talk, there's so many things that we are so much in alignment. And even in the things that you're doing, a lot of those things I've been doing here in the States and helping people. We talked about the networking thing and how that's been a challenge for individuals and how we make it fun, we make it engaging. So I look forward to being able to work with you. And I don't know if you remember Chrissy Robinson, but she also is funny. Like at least 3 people had shared your contact information with me. And it was like, you got to speak to Nanette. So this has been divine that we even connect our souls, our minds for growth for the future. And I look forward to what God has plans, because this is not of our own doing, but definitely of His. And as we close out, I do have one last question, because we asked everyone who joins us on our Juneteenth platform, what does Juneteenth mean to you?
Juneteenth to me is it's so heavy. Like, to me, when you really know what Juneteenth means, it's just a time where we get the message out. Like, we make sure we get the message out that freedom is possible. And so for me, Juneteenth means like, no matter what's going on, we don't have to be enslaved. I had a young man tell me recently, he said, we don't know during slavery, when people were looking to escape, 98% of the enslaved Africans were saying, why you need to escape? Master's treating us fine. He put a roof over our head, is feeding us. Why you need to escape? So for me, Juneteenth is that wake-up call, like, hey, we don't need to be here. And it wasn't easy for people to leave the plantation. People don't even know that. And so Juneteenth is a declaration of freedom, like freedom of our minds, freedom of our bodies, freedom of our spirits.
Well, thank you so much, Nanette. It was a pleasure having you join us on today. I don't know is there any last words you would like to share with others before we close out?
You know, one thing I forgot, and I have this behind me, Sacred Women, Queen Afua, she wanted to bring the program, the Sacred Women Rites of Passage program, to Ghana. So we did our first cohort ever, started last March, and it's totally transformed not only the diasporan sisters who were part of the program, but especially the Ghanaian sisters. And you said something about forgiving your mother and people who haven't had children. And one of the sisters in the group had an issue with her mother, and she hasn't had children. But when I took the focus off of her and you asked me how I did it, I said, you keep talking about yourself and you don't care about your mother. And when I said that, she kind of stood up at attention and was like, damn, I never thought about that. Everything I'm saying about my mother is all about me. I've never once thought, what has my mother been through? And so, you know, my final words are, let's just keep doing the work to heal ourselves. Let's not think it's funny or is weird or, you know, I see rappers these days talk about mental health because they understand that when you're able to nip that in the bud, you can fly higher. You can fly higher.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Nanette. I'm going to put you backstage and then I'll come back to close out with you. But thank you so much, everyone. This was an amazing conversation. I hope you got a lot out of this conversation on today because my soul is full. My soul is full in so many different ways. And it shared a lot about our culture, about our differences, about our similarities, about colonism and what that looks like both in the United States, both in Ghana. This is the last of our conversations about Ghana, and I hope you have gotten a lot from the conversation. But this is not going to be the very last. This is the last for this year, right? Because we're going into 2026, and we're going to have a whole host of conversations because, as you see, there's a lot for us to unpack, right? The idea that we were slaves and not enslaved, the idea that we're not smart, that we're not intelligent, and that caps weren't put on us, limitations were put on us, that forced us not to be our greatest selves, and that puts doubt and fear in our minds about who we are and who we can be. If we take the limits off, what's possible? And that is what we want to go into 2026. What is possible when we take the limits off of our minds and our hearts and our past? Take the limits off so that we can grow, so that we can go deeper, so that we can soar higher, and so that we can be our best selves, not just for ourselves, but for our children, our children's children, and for our community. So thank you so much for your time. We hope that you join us next week. We still will be here on Christmas and on New Year's, and we will be doing recaps of all the amazing stories and conversations, activations, events, and things that we have done throughout the year. From my home to yours, we love you. Happy holidays, happy New Year's, and thank you for being with us and supporting us throughout the years. Have a great one, everyone. Bye.
From the roots of tradition to the rise of reconnection. where history meets the heart of Africa. Celebrate freedom, culture, and homecoming. This isn't just a trip, it's a return. The motherland is calling. Will you answer?